Good people, what's up, what's good? Blessed be your host, Caleb Smith. Today we have a very special guest in the building, Heru Neset. He is the man behind the scenes. Anytime that you see Dr. Kaba, it's a genius that's making things happen, man, behind the scenes. And he's a guy who's a fellow Capricorn, laid back spirit. He does a million things. And, today we're going to delve deep and find out who this guy is behind the camera. Heru, we appreciate you, man, for pulling up.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me as well. It's an opportunity just to be here
Humble.
in Atlanta. This is, where the new mecca
Mm.
of blackness is going to be at for the
sure.
future.
For sure.
I believe, from my perspective, just seeing all of the different opportunities out here, seeing all of the different people around here. It just feel at home when you're around people that look like you,
I love
on a consistent basis. So I believe that we're in the mecca. This is the new. This is why they got the new Black Wall Street out in Stonecrest, because just overall Atlanta is going to be the epicenter of Black economics, Black growth, Black everything, establishments, and then once Atlanta does that, then it's going to expand, and we're going to get back to the original foundation of America, which is blackness at its core.
Hey, we're going to get started early, bro.
Yes, sir.
Being here, flying down here, what do you love the most about working and being here in Atlanta right now?
Well, I would say the best thing about Atlanta is just being around the hospitality. Like, when people always talk about Southern hospitality, you definitely see it from the second, you get off the plane, from the airport, to just, going around to the various places, linking up with businesses like JB's Records, going out there, because we were here back in March. So we came out and did an event at JB's. My father did a book signing, book lecture on his Spirituality Before Religion's book. So just bringing the culture to here, and knowing that there are people that want to hear this information, that will offer their space, that will provide us with the tools and the resources that we need to advance us as a people. Because I think when we go back to, the concept of like a barter system, when we look at the resources that all of us have and that we can provide to bring us forth. When we think of this Western civilization, when it comes to just the dollar bill, everything being about money, everything being about something, that's not rooted in a spiritual, it's rooted in something that's kind of more so man-made, to keep a lock and keep a cap on how far certain groups of people can go in society, to make sure that the Western civilization powers that be can be the one that reign dominant over everybody else. So just being here and seeing, the possibilities as well. Just, if you, because I grew up in the Bronx, New York. So my first 24 years of my life, I've seen nothing but Black and Hispanic folks, and more so Black Hispanic folks. Because when you do go outside New York, you do see a different level of, the camaraderie that Black people and Hispanic people have. And then I moved to Seattle. And then being in Seattle, when you see the certain demographic of the Hispanic population, it's very different than when we're talking about in New York City. And it's just a different, because a lot of the folks that be in New York, they could be, one of their parents is Puerto Rican or Dominican, and the other parent is Black. Then a lot of times when you come on the West Coast, you see a lot of when you think of Los Angeles, and you think of like all of the quote unquote gang fighting that goes on, a lot of times they show you like the Mexican gangs versus the Black gangs. So you have a certain demographic. So I think that's even the reason why it's good to travel, just as Black folks in particular, to see that there's different levels of, Blackness, different levels of the culture, different levels of all the things that, make us similarities. Like, everybody has similarities and differences, but that all makes us one, and it makes us appreciate where one person comes from, so they can see that perspective from the north, the south, and the east and the west. So just understanding that, and just understanding that, Atlanta has always kind of been a mecca for Blackness, but I just think it's really being revived. And even since the pandemic, with a lot of the I see a lot of people from New York had moved because
sure.
because a lot of the restrictions that were put on, in New York, and Atlanta was a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
And in between that 3-year span, people came down here and were able to create a business, were able to create something, and then now we're seeing an influx of, blackness coming back to the Atlanta scene and things like that. So I definitely think that it's gonna just propel even more in the future.
Yeah, bro, for sure. Like Lanier, right?
Yes.
Being, over there with you and your father, seeing it, Jim Crow Road, seeing things like that. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. All the deaths. What type of vibe did you feel from just being around Lake Lanier?
To be honest, I didn't. I kind of felt like I was, just at home in a sense, because when you think about that area, that is a blackness. When you're rooted in spirituality and what was there before what we see now,
Sure.
know that there's a special connection that we have to have with areas like that, in the sense that we respect it. We're not trying to go and do anything negative. We're trying to go there and pay our respects and things like that. And even the first time when we were here in March, and me and Amadeus were working on a documentary reviving Oscarville, and when we were filming my father, during the process of filming, we started to hear just a influx of the wave, the sounds of the waves, and it was just the ancestors speaking. And even more so, on our trip to Lake Lanier back in March, there was like a rock chip that just hit our car and just made like a crack in the car. And at that moment, we just felt like the ancestors were saying, like, we're here.
Wow.
Yes, and then even now, when we went to the premiere of Lanier before, we got some of the water from Lake Lanier, put it in a bottle, and I was just telling the ancestors to give me a certain amount of water, and that's just what I came in the bottle. And then when we went to the premiere, my father did a post-movie interview, and he actually is pouring libation in respects to the movie, in respects to our ancestors, and just the characters that they have built that have made us, because we're our ancestors living through us. Even like we were talking yesterday, and you were talking about how your mother can trace the lineage like back, way back. And it's like, that's what it is. And the generations, all of the ancestry and lineage, it's coming through what you're doing, the ancestors that came before you, it's just coming full circle. And then even more so when you have a place like Atlanta and the rich black history, yes, there's things like Lake Lanier, things that negatively have impacted us. But the thing about black folks, we've always figured out a way to take something that has negatively impacted us and make it positive, and actually make it, better in a sense, because it's like a lot of the greatness that we do showcase now in society, it does come from the fact that we were enslaved and we were put on under some of the worst conditions. Like when you think of coal being black, when you put coal under pressure, you make a diamond. So the thing about it is that they put us under immense pressure, but the only thing that they didn't realize is that we were gonna become those diamonds, and that's where we were destined. Even before they rudely interrupted us and enslaved us and things of that nature, they saw the extensive richness that we had in our history. Mansa Musa, gold was such in an abundance, he was just giving it out where he go. Now in this generation, Western civilization is about hoarding. If I can't have it, I'll burn it all. And, even like when we look at things like what happened in Hawaii and Lahaina, when the Western civilization can't get what they want from you by just either, asking you, can we have it, or maybe paying you a smidgen of money, they figure out ways, they're going to take it regardless.
And destroy it. Yeah.
But the thing about it is that the times that that's going to be all the way like fulfilled is kind of, we're seeing less and less of that now, because we're waking up more and more. Like everything with the pandemic in particular, just everything that happened, even with the George Floyd, with the riots, all the stuff that we see. This is living history. A lot of times when people, you went to school when we were younger, we read about history, saw it, and a lot of times there might just be pictures, maybe a couple videos, but nothing really in depth. But now what we're seeing is that we don't need to have lived in the 60s, so to speak, to see what it's like, because we saw it just a couple years ago, and we see what they tried to do with the vaccine in comparison to things like the Tuskegee experiment, and just the different things that they do and how the cycles continue. Even some of the generational trauma that black people go through, the cycles that continue, and we got to break those cycles, and we got to break those chains, and the way to do that is to have a deeper understanding of just life itself, and understand that, like we were talking about earlier, exploring various places, understanding different cultures, understanding that a black person from New York culture is different from a black person that grew up in Los Angeles than a person who grew up in Atlanta. So we just got to understand that, and understand that that's what makes us whole, is the difference of experiences.
Yes, sir.
And when we look at people like the Moors, when we look at people like the, the Aboriginal Native Americans, the black ones, and we look at all these different dynasties, the Kemetic dynasty, all of these different dynasties had different variations, but they were all still connected by one common thing, that we were all in this together as black people. And then, as we can see throughout time, a lot of the Western civilization came through and kind of destroyed what we were building, but it also came from sometimes we were fighting amongst one another. Right. Because we know in society there's a thing called ego. And ego is not necessarily black or white at times, it's just the thing that humans have. Right. And a lot of times, sometimes that's what gets in the way of certain progress, but as people, that's why we have to talk with one another so we can overcome those obstacles. Because I think that, what we've gone through as a people, from, being enslaved, and now we're really understanding what we were before we were enslaved, because they just try to start off history as we were these quote unquote primitive individuals that, we were, now they're trying to say that we benefited from slavery and all of that.
Learn skills, that's what they say.
Yeah, and it's like, it's just so blatant of a lie, we can't even really feed into the nonsense, because they're trying to distract us with things that, we know the truth. And it just is what it is, and they have to deal with that. Just because they want to be stubborn and don't want to accept the facts of society and accept what their ancestors did, the only way you can move on in anything in life is to be able to admit what went wrong, what you did, anything in life, and move on and feel how you can grow from that. But they're trying to cover up the nonsense with more lies. Just like when you lie, you got to tell another lie to cover up that lie, and you got to keep telling lies. But if you just come clean, you'll be able to get that burden off of you.
That's right.
But they're going to keep living with that burden, no matter if they're living in a $1.5 million house or they're living in an apartment next to the people they hate. At the end of the day, and as we can see, the gentrification comes in our neighborhoods. They have all the fancy neighborhoods that, we still built, but they still want to come into the neighborhoods that we have, like Los Angeles, Leimert Park, here in Atlanta. You see all the gentrification that's going on within these neighborhoods. And they tell us that we're primitive and we're, less than and all of that, but they continuously want to be next to us, get ideas from us, lay up with us in that sense, and procreate, because a lot of them know that when the birth dearth and a lot of the concepts that deal with the fact that when two white individuals get together, that is not going to really continue the race. They know the best thing they can do is do that. So I understand from the perspective, but we have to understand that we cannot fall into the traps, because the same thing that they're doing, white people will marry with black people to take their wealth, to do some type of infiltration, to destroy what they might have in their family structure. And we see that a lot. And we just got to overcome these obstacles, and we have to tell our children that you have to be with people that look like you, because we're the only group that gets quote unquote shunned for saying, oh, a black person should be with a black person. Nobody shuns Asian people if Asian people say they should be with Asians, Hispanic should be with Hispanic. Nobody wants to shun them. But when a black person says, oh, they'll be like, you just try everything, but they don't tell, nobody else gets told that, but only black people. Because we see a lot of the stealing of the culture, hijacking of what we're bringing forth. And our greatness, even when you look at some of the black folks that are in prison, they're geniuses.
That's right.
And that's the reason why they're in prison, because they know if they allowed a lot of these black men and women who are locked up to be on the outside, they could actually do something with themselves. But they are invested in the prison system, you know, even whether it's the rap music that we hear, some of the television programs that we see, a lot of the top programs that black people watch involve something negative.
That's right.
It's we're not seeing, you know, the contrary of what's it like, you know, when black people grow up in a sufficient type of surroundings and things. They just show and then even when they compare us, they always want to compare black people to the lowest common denominator for some degree. They always want to utilize something or compare it to something that's degenerate, because it's easy for them to just go to something that, first of all, they're already implementing by what they're pushing, because a lot of us know we would care to hear some music on the radio that wasn't ratchet, that wasn't talking. Even if you had some of those songs, there is no ma'at. There is no balance to what we're hearing. Different. And it's just getting worse and worse, because when we were growing up, you know, we had certain artists, certain individuals that we didn't agree with their image. But then now in 2023, we're seeing it's just more blatant. It's like Western civilization is at its wit's end, and they're just literally throwing anything they can at us and trying to see what's going to stick. But the thing is that we're just dodging it. We're becoming above all of the things that they try to say about us and the things that they try to make us believe, because it's really mental. The outlook, like I'm saying, when you see black people flourishing, even if you see a black man on the side of the road selling some hot dogs and selling some sodas, that's still a man that's making a hustle, that's doing something that I can deeply respect, because at the end of the day, that's everybody starts off somewhere. He can start off right there. In 2-3 years, he can have a whole restaurant.
Come on.
So it's all about starting off somewhere, and we got to support every time we see people who are doing that. We got to make sure we keep growing the businesses that we see, even from Atlanta all the way to New York to LA, just even intercontinental. We just got to continue doing this, and then we can get back to black when it was when we was in control as it relates to not being interrupted by Western civilization.
Hey, that's heavy, bro. Media, right? That's so important. You know, how we are depicted as a people, our storytelling, all of those things. Why is media so important to you?
I believe media is so important because just my upbringing, some of the influence that I've had was because of the media, because of just seeing rappers and you know, certain entertainers, and seeing what's pushed in front of us. Because after a while, you could know all of the information, but there's still certain things you might fall victim to as it relates to just society, you know, growing up, you know, certain peer pressures, things of that nature. So media is important because, like with Hitler and the Nazi, they used media as the number one thing to do what they did, and they exterminated millions of people, more blacks than Jews, but and then they have the Holocaust for it. But there's nothing in regards to why Hitler initially did what he did and why he chose out the Jews, because he knew that there was a connection with their blackness. So they used the media to control people, to push propaganda, and as we can see, that was a catastrophe that occurred in history. And then we can see that what they're trying to do when we see a lot of the music that they push, a lot of it is just more so degenerate in the sense that, yes, we understand that there is a level of society that might fall victim to some of the images that they display. But that is not the everyday black man, everyday black woman. Those are the people that we can help. But if they just keep throwing that same image in front of us, the youth, the young people that might not have individuals in their life that are guiding them in the right direction, they might not be able to overcome certain obstacles, and they'll become a victim, and then they'll become a slave to the state. They'll have to go and be imprisoned because of the circumstances. Because a lot of people, a lot of these rappers that we see even that go to jail, get hit with the RICO, I believe a lot of them put themselves in that position but they didn't put themselves in that condition. The condition that they grew up in and was born and raised in, they did not put themselves in that. Yes, they might have put themselves in bad positions, but that's only because they were a product of their environment. And I believe that every individual, no matter what they have done in life, like we look at Young Thug and we look at a lot of the individuals even here in Atlanta, if they were given different opportunities when they were growing up and didn't have to maybe resort to doing certain things that caught them up in the system, I don't think they would have fell victim, because we see so many young black men that are actually doing things that might have come from the same hood he come from, same surrounding areas, but it's all about the opportunities and how we're willing to invest in our communities. Because a lot of people will invest, like they'll invest for you to go to school. They'll give you a $20, $30, $50,000 loan to go to college. But when you get out of college and try to get that same loan for a business, you don't get that. That same loan for a house, you don't get that. But they have no problem giving an 18-year-old $25,000, $50,000, thinking, knowing that, yes, and it's the same thing. You're going to have to pay that back just the same way if they gave you $25,000, $50,000 to get a home loan, to get a business loan. You're going to have to pay the same thing, same interest, along the same lines of that. But it just shows you where their mind's at. They'd rather give you money to keep you indebted rather than give you money to make a business. Then you can pay back that loan and build even more businesses and things of that nature. And they know that's what we would do. Even when we're talking about reparations, a lot of people say that that if they gave us reparations, all we do is just go spend it on X, Y, and Z.
I hate hearing that too.
But I say if that was the case, they would have done it already. They would have given us the money so we could have, quote unquote, went out and blew it on Jordans and all the stereotypical stuff. Then, and they get it right back, and they'd be able to say, well, we gave them reparations. So if that's really the case, they would have given that us back in the 60s. That's right. Back when, in quote unquote 1865, when we were freed from slavery, they would have did it back then. Why they didn't do it? Because they knew that they feared a Nat Turner, they feared Harriet Tubman's, they feared Malcolm X, Martin Luther King's. So at the end of the day, all it takes, just like we know, all it takes is one person to destroy a good event, to do something negative. All it takes is one person like a Malcolm X, a Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, to revolutionize a whole society, a whole generation of people. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nat Turner, all of those people, different parts of history, but we still know them, we still respect them, and their names still ring bells. Like when people talk about people's name ring bells, Nat Turner name still rings bells. And in a positive way. We have to invoke that spirit of the Nat Turner and the Harriet Tubman in this generation. Maybe not, maybe in that regards, because we are living in different times, but whatever you're doing in society, like how you're doing your podcast, you're channeling your inner Nat Turner by bringing on revolutionary people, trying to tap into that type of consciousness. So I think that whatever a person's doing in society, whether it's filmmaking, whether it's martial arts, you could be teaching martial arts about how to defend yourself against white supremacy, teaching martial arts that came from places like, Africa, or even some of the combat that came from here, solely in America. So there's different variations to how a person can utilize what they want to do in this day and age to be able to relive what their ancestors had put forth.
Yes, sir.
So we just like me and my father, we created a documentary. Our first documentary that we ever created was on Harriet Tubman. It was called The Underground Railroad. Because yes, Harriet Tubman freed us on the Underground Railroad. But when we did that in 2017, we had to start in our minds figuring out how we're going to free ourselves from the Underground Railroad and the mindsets that we have and some of the thoughts that go through our mind that might stop us from continuing and doing and shunning us from wanting to move forward with what we want to do. We just have to believe in ourselves and have the vision, and because we have the creativity.
Yes, we do.
We have all of that. We just got to build more on our capital and our resources, and that's what working together is going to do for us. Back when they had more of a barter system, it wasn't about like, I do something for you that's worth $100. You have to do something that's worth $100. It could just be a trade-off
Trading
of
services.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's not. See, Western civilization has added that dollar value, and everything has to be this way or that way.
Yep.
But it's like, how about we just go back to the way it was when our ancestors ruled the world? Because that's when we see a lot of our flourishing. And even so, we see a lot of our flourishing when we look at even during the enslavement process, because a lot of people don't want to talk about the black people that killed white slave owners or white slave masters and fled to another state and lived to be 90, 100 years old.
Yep.
Not everybody was just sitting there being killed, being abused, being enslaved. As we, Harriet Tubman freed all of those slaves, and she said herself she would have
Save
freed
more.
more
Yep.
if they just knew that they were enslaved
It's a
as
heavy
well.
statement. Yeah.
Yeah. And even to this day, a lot of people that want to denigrate racism and what it's doing in society, they're doing the same type of ideology when you try to denigrate something that is real, something that people are living through every day. Even if you don't live through it, you know there's somebody in the world that's living through it. Whether you're a black person seeing it or a white person. White people that deny racism, it just doesn't even make sense, because they're the ones that implement it. They're the ones that go around and don't have to worry about nothing. White people don't got to worry about, am I going to be too white today? Am I going to get stopped by the police and they're going to remind me I'm a white man or woman? They don't got to worry about that.
Yeah.
But when black folks, first thing they wake up in the morning, they could be reminded, and that could just ruin their whole day. And that sometimes they might, if that's a husband or a father, that they might take that out on their children, on their wife, and we see that a lot. So a lot of our trauma does come from some of the things that we see in society and the things that affect us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we, that's just something we have to just break. A lot of these chains, both mental and physical.
Hey, Stan, on that point as well, when we had your father on the podcast back in March, he showed me he had files on files. I was like, yo, how do you have all of this? Pointed to you, and I was so impressed. Why is us doing our homework, research so important for our films?
Well, doing the research gives us the background information. So, like, for instance, when we go various places, I'll look up some more information. Even if I have a pre-notion of what we might do when we come to a place, like when we came to Atlanta in March and we were doing something on Lake Lanier, we were doing something on Auburn, Black Wall Street, and we were just correlating it to just, the idea that we have to make this legit. We have, the validity is in the evidence, and we have, and we showcase the evidence by, even just in the documentaries, getting concrete pictures, getting the evidence, the right ones that are appropriate for what is being spoken about in the documentary, and being precise and being on point, because a lot of times, if we're just off a little bit, they'll try to attack it, and they'll try to be like, well, if that's wrong, then everything else is wrong.
Yep.
So we just have to be keen on and understand that, we got to do our due diligence and then do our research and make sure everything is precise, because, that's just what we do as a people, and just coordinating everything so other people can understand, so other people can do the research. We'll do the research, and then you hear it, and then you can do the research, and it's just like even when you're writing a paper for school, the bibliography,
cite your sources.
You got to cite everything. You have to make sure that the person reading that 15, 20-page paper can go and cite everything that you said to confirm. Because people can just make stuff up. People can just say things that sound like it would fit. But being precise and being, strategic and to the point is the key behind how we're going to take this to the next level. So it just shuts down anybody that has anything that wants to go against it, you just shut it down with the information, with the facts. Not being emotional, coming with the facts, and understanding that you have to maintain a level head. Because other people will do antics and do this if they know you're right, but they're like, I got to throw something in there to throw everything off. To try to trip you
That's
up.
a fact.
But we just got to understand and stay poised and understand that, cool, calm, and collect is the way to go. Because you can never let anybody know what you're thinking, because that's when they got you. A lot of times we see people do things just to antagonize you, just to get you riled up, just to get you to a point where they know they could get you. But if they can't guess your next move, they can't mess with you like that. A bully, bullies mess with people until they see, oh my God, they're shocked that
That's
the person
crazy.
started fighting back.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's like in society, you push your people, they're gonna fight back. You know, whether it's, yes, you might do a lot of things to subjugate a person's mindset and things like that, but at the end of the day, a person is gonna always be able to overcome, especially when you're black. Something about that melanin that's gonna make you help overcome all of the obstacles. Even some of the people that you see on a daily basis that might be homeless, that might not have everything that they need, they'll still be able to persevere. They're still able to live without a house, without all of those things.
Yeah.
Maybe they might do some things they shouldn't do, but they're still here because they have that, you know, that reliance that it's gonna be okay and they're gonna be able to make it. And just as we can see, the push for reparations is becoming very prominent in what we're seeing in society today. And they're trying to do everything, they're already trying to pass a bill to say that if you pass this reparation, then we ain't gonna give you no aid for your state if you don't pass. Even though we know it ain't gonna really go, just the fact that they'll try it just knows that they know we gonna get this, because if you knew we weren't gonna get it, you wouldn't even worry about it. You know, so I just think at the end of the day, understanding that staying, you know, direct, straight to the point, having the facts, having the evidence, helps the conversation out, helps prove our points, and the evidence is there. Even though you try to burn everything, we still got the evidence. You still have the slave narratives. You still have all of the things, you know, like even Harriet Tubman. She died, I believe, in the early 1900s, about 1905. So she was, you know, that's still prevalent in what we, you know, our history. There's pictures of her. Even when she was 90 years old, she was still trying to help. She had a home for the elderly. So she was still trying to help people. And even when you think about how long it might have taken her to get from one place to the next, freeing enslaved people through snowstorms, through, you know, thunderstorms, through all of that, I believe that in our society, we kind of got it made in comparison to what our ancestors had to go through. So if that's the case, we need to really be elevating and taking this to the next level. Because if we're not, then what did they do it for? And then what's our next generation? Because if a father, mother loves their children so much, you have to work towards making sure they don't have to go through any of the obstacles and set up that generational wealth. Things that were taken from us due to things like the crack era, due to things like, you know, making sure that the father stays out the house because they get more money in the household.
The welfare system.
So they set it up for the father to possibly do things he's not supposed to do. But they set it up that way to destroy the family by the illusion that you were getting a little bit of extra more money. So they just figured out strategic ways about how they're going to subjugate us, but it didn't ultimately work. That's why they have to keep figuring out new ways and new plans, because if it worked, we wouldn't be here today. But we still here, and we still thriving, and we're still surviving, and it's only going to get better for us as a people, and it's only going to get worse for them as a people, and them being white supremacists, white society that does not understand what we need to do as a people. And some of the Sambos out there too. Because if we get rid of all the white supremacists and all of that, and the Sambos are still here, they'll keep that white supremacy still alive in blackface. So we just got to understand that. Facts and evidence is key.
For sure, brother. During this time, we got mass shootings. We have white supremacists trying to go inside of churches, CRT. What do you think is sparking all of these insecurities right now?
Peace, family. I know you guys are enjoying the show, so I just wanted to give you guys a quick PSA. While exporting Heru's files, some of the files of the interview got corrupted, but however, that did not stop us. I was down. I was getting all frustrated, but shout out to Sid for always holding me down. We were able to pivot. We were able to get flexible. Heru, he was able to connect with us, so we were able to finish the remainder of the interview via satellite. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the rest of this conversation. It's an hour plus. We decided to go an hour plus to give you guys more than what you asked for, because we had to make that up for you guys. So all the creatives, I know y'all understand technical difficulties and bad timing, things happen. However, you always got to pivot. So enjoy the rest of this conversation. Shout out to Sia for always making her editing magic be our little nice touch chef's kiss. So thank y'all, man, for always showing love and support. Make sure to support my guy Heru as well, and follow and subscribe and show love on all platforms to him and his father as well. Shout out to Dr. Kaba, the entire family, his wife T, Kaba's wife as well. Thank y'all, man, for always showing love. And let's get back to the show. And thank you again for everything. Until next time, peace. Perfect, man. Hey, Ru, thank you for your time, man, being flexible as well. The last question from our conversation before it got chopped off was CRT. So how do you feel about Ron DeSantis in Florida and this whole movement of trying to control how our children are taught Black history?
Yes, and you know what I find interesting? Maybe the question got messed up from the footage before, because since then, we were talking, me and my father, we were talking about going to Florida, Jacksonville in particular, because there were some brothers that were bringing us out there to do a presentation. And it's a 2-day presentation. One of the days, it's about a dedication to Francis Cress Welsing, ending white supremacy. So we definitely going to be bringing some of that energy down there. November 18th and 19th, that weekend, we're going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. Nice. So maybe everything happened the way it did, so we could, talk more about this, because we're actually talking about doing a little, mini documentary while we're down there talking about the ban on Black history. We're even probably going to go by the place where that incident happened, where the white supremacists shot 3 Black people. We're going to go down there and, do just a blessing and pay our respects, and just do a little, have a little, 5-minute conversation on camera. And we're going to, add that. Also, just certain segments of the presentation that my father's going to be doing, also going to be adding that. So we're going to be putting together a little mini documentary, going to release it probably sometime around December, around the holiday season. So definitely, yeah. So answering that question in particular, like everything they're trying to ban, everything that they're doing it for a reason, because they see everything around them, it's starting to dismantle of white supremacy, the dismantle of just a lot of the images that we're seeing that, that we were taught to believe, but now we're seeing were not the truth. So we're overcoming a lot of the obstacles that we did face in the past generation. And that's what the younger generation has to do, is pass the mantle off to even the up and coming people who are, let's say, in kindergarten, middle school, even some of the high schoolers, coming from our perspective, where I wasn't, far removed from that, because I'm 29. So I graduated high school in 2012. So I still understand what's going on, and how a lot of the youth, what the challenges that they're facing, whether it's the school system, even coming out of the school system, just they tell you to go to school to get a job. Then you go to school and you get in debt, and then you find, a decent, maybe mediocre job, and that barely helps you pay rent, get by. And then, of course, you still have to pay back those student loans that you took out. And, pardon me. And then, as we were talking about, they always will give you a loan for schooling to put you in debt, but they won't give you that same loan to be able to go out and get a business, because a business can make you money. And education was told that it was going to make us money. But a lot of times when we take out those loans, and then when we get out into the job market doesn't match the expectations that we assumed that it was going to be able to accumulate the type of funds that was going to put us in a position to, be able to thrive, not just survive. A lot of Black people, when we think about the concept of living check to check, those people are just surviving. We have to get into thrival mode, where we're able to pay our bills, do all of that, and have the comfortability that when we're, out having fun, we're not having to worry about all of these different things that we have to pay, because all of those things are already in place. But as we know, the system is set up for us to not, be able to do that, or they have a bargaining where, okay, you can enjoy your life, but then you're not going to be this on the other end. So a lot of times we just see some of the things in this society
and then just trying to counteract that with what we're doing, correlating it to our history and why our substance is so valuable and why they're doing to us what they're doing. Because CRT, basically, that incident that happened when you had that white supremacist go in and shoot and kill those 3 Black people, in a sense, they know why. But when the school system is setting up the certain standard as it relates to showcasing, them having, they can't tell you exactly why based off of them trying to ban the history that would explain exactly why that white supremacist would go inside of a store and shoot and kill 3 Black people. So a lot of the things and as soon as they did that, an incident like that happens, which in a sense, white people were looking at, let's say, the Montgomery boat brawl, and they were looking at all of the rejoice that Black people were having and how we were basking in, the glory of seeing those individuals, both older and younger people, defend themselves against white supremacists and, win that challenge and ultimately come out victorious. A lot of times we're so indoctrinated into seeing Black people being shot by the police and killed, being shot by white supremacists and being killed. The long history, even just in the past few years when we see the George Floyd, the Ahmaud Arbery, the Breonna Taylor, we're so kind of indoctrinated into seeing that. When we saw something like what happened in Alabama on the boat brawl, we saw something that activated in us that, yes, we can do this. We don't always have to just sit back on TV and see these cases where we're the ones being taken out or the ones being assaulted and harmed. But now we can see ourselves defending ourselves. And as you can see, when we defend ourselves, we don't need to go and get a gun and shoot somebody and take their life away. It's fisticuffs when it comes to Black folk for the most part. Sometimes, when our own situations might arise, but if you're just going toe to toe, and that's what happens. White people can only become victorious. Now, if a white person pulled out a gun on that Montgomery brawl and, ended up shooting somebody, it would have been a whole different case. But because there was no actual, besides the chair, the weaponry that was involved wasn't life-threatening, so to speak. So when you see Black people go toe-to-toe with white folks, they know that they're going to lose every time. That's why they need to run and go and get a gun and even do things like the CRT, take away the history. So, in a sense, we might go and do harm against our own people, because when you have a lack of self-knowledge, you might just do things that don't align with being on code. But once we can all get a different understanding of what it is to be on code and the importance of being on code, because the same reason some of the young brothers who might not be doing the right thing, their on code is about survival, just like a Black person is on code about survival. We know the white man is the one who is oppressing our communities, and the white woman, and just the power structure. Whereas some of the brothers in the hood think it'd be people that look like them, whether infringing on, selling drugs on their territory or whatever the case may be, that we sometimes involve ourselves in because of the deprivation of money and being put in conditions like we were talking about. Black people, we put ourselves in positions to, do the wrong thing, have the wrong things done upon us. But the conditions that we live in that put us in sometimes those situations are not our own fault. We were put in those situations because of the strength and the power that they know we have. And once we tap into that, and as we're doing in 2023, and we're going to be working on this in the years beyond, as we can see, once we tap into it, there's nothing that can stop us, because you could have a person be indoctrinated through whatever means, whether it's the music that they're pushing out, whether it's some of the movies and the imagery. But once that person gains knowledge of self, it don't matter if that person was selling drugs, pimping women, whatever they were doing. Once they get knowledge of self and they're willing to make turn over a new leaf, they're not going back to that lifestyle. They might take that lifestyle and what they were doing in that and flip it and try to make what they're doing positive, if they were selling drugs or they were doing something along those lines, what they might have been using some scientific methods to create some of the drugs they might have been selling. Now they can convert that into something positive. It could be even bacon. It could be anything along those lines that you would take the same similar, items, tools, measuring cups, things like that. If you can take that and do something negative with it, take that same thing and do something positive. And that's the thing that they fear the most, especially when we talk about reparations, because they know at the end of the day, if we were going to go out and just spend that money frivolously and just do God knows what, they would have given us that money to say, well, we gave you some reparations, and then they would be like, well, you can't say nothing about this, that, and the third, because we repaired what we caused the damage for.
That's
but
right.
They do fear ultimately that we'll get that money and fund a revolution, whatever means it might be, whether it's a podcast and create that into a whole, studio front where you can start creating, other talk shows. You can start creating drama, comedy, horror, all these different type of base series you can start creating once you get those reparations. It's not about the people that's going to go out and blow them on materialistic things. It's about that Black person that either go out and fund the revolution through, edutainment, taking education and entertainment, because we know we're a visual people. And a lot of us do receive, that's why documentaries like Hidden Colors and Out of Darkness were so successful, because of the imagery. As we can see with podcasts nowadays, and what you're doing and what everybody's doing in that realm in the Black community, we're seeing the visual. It's good to hear somebody, but when you see them, it's just a little bit different. So we're just more of a visual people. So when it comes to like the edutainment, they just don't want to see that, because then the edutainment leads to that real revolution. Because once we gain knowledge of self, then there's nothing that they can really do to try to infiltrate or penetrate what we got going on. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be about them trying to blame it on, well, look what Black people are doing with other Black people. They're killing each other. That'll be a non-factor once we gain that complete total knowledge of self and be on one accord. And a lot of it does come with the monetary deprivation. Once we have reparations, the number one thing that we're fighting over is, let's say, when it comes to monetary funds, resources, land, things of that nature. Once we have that all in place, there is no territory fighting over, because everybody has what's theirs. Everybody is able to, enjoy what they have. But when we're living in impoverished conditions, very, minute levels of, the way, we're treated as it relates to just, on a consistent basis all across the globe, because it varies from place to place. Black people on the West Coast are not affected the same way as Black folks in the South, Black folks on the East Coast. So once we get on the same page, then there is no more that all of these differences when it comes to the laws and the judicial, because we'll be the ones back in power. Because the reason why the politicians do things for the Asian groups and the LGBT groups is because they have money and funds and resources that they allocate to politicians, that those politicians then go, and when they get elected, they get bills passed for them. We just get caught up too much in celebrityism at times, and we just think that the celebrities are going to do it. But if we really had a tight team of Black folks that had money and resources, and we were to start getting some of these politicians on board with an anti-Black hate crime bill, we could get that across. But not all of us. Some of us are just a little bit too caught up on some of the materialistic. And these Democrats, what they do is that they prop up these rappers and these actors and these celebrities to buy the imagery of Black people. They're not really buying Black people because we believe it. We just like these artists. We like these sports players. So if they say, hey, vote blue, some of us, not all of us, will just vote blue just because our favorite celebrity said do that. But it doesn't come with, hey, vote blue because we're going to do an anti-hate crime bill. It's just vote blue because we kind of want to still just keep you indoctrinated as we have done for the past, 60, 70 years. As we know, Fannie Lou Hamer, she did what she did. She caused a lot of white people to become the Republican Party, because the Republican Party was predominantly black at one point because of just the viewpoints and just how we view things. And I think that it doesn't have to, it's like, you don't have to like one individual and follow completely everything they say. If you like bits and pieces of what one person says and you like bits and pieces of what another person says, you can take that from each individual and create your own, what you want to do. Just like with this whole, like, if you don't vote for Biden and you're voting for Trump. But It's like, at the end of the day, but then what world are we living in if they're really giving us absolutely no option? If people say we don't want to vote for Biden because he ain't doing nothing, he hasn't done anything. But then on the flip side, let's say you don't want to vote for Trump, because just because you don't like Biden doesn't mean that you like Trump. But somehow, some way, everybody who don't like Trump like Biden.
Yep.
That's the thing about it. There's a lot of black folks that do not like Biden, but that doesn't automatically mean that we like Trump. We just know and understand the game that they're playing. And Biden has not done nor said anything remotely close. The last time Joe Biden has spoke on black people was when he said this government shutdown that didn't happen. He said that's going to affect black people the most. That's the closest he's ever come in his whole entire presidency to even trying to correlate anything about black folks. Because every other time he's been talking to black folks, he gets very loud and angry when he's talking to like the Congressional Black Caucus. He's very demandatory there, but he's senile everywhere else. Just seems very odd. But at the end of the day, this is what people have to understand. We should be able to not vote for either, and it's not like, oh, we're still voting for one. Because then in that case, then we're not really voting then. It's just kind of really a game, because if you telling me like a lot of times, we see a lot of these, if there's two people in a competition, you're gonna vote for one. If somebody votes for one person, that counts for their vote. Just because somebody doesn't vote doesn't mean you're gonna vote for the person who has who's the underdog. It just, if a person gets 10 votes, another person gets 9 votes, the one who gets 10 is higher. Just because somebody didn't vote doesn't mean that, 3 more votes is going to go to the person who got 9 and they'll just win by default. That would seem rigged. That would seem unfair. But somehow, some way in the system of voting, they don't seem to be rigged. They just make it seem like, well, because the Republicans are the most dominant and they have the most, if you don't vote for Biden, then Trump will just gain that, which to some degree I can get it, but that's still casing that it's a game and it's not really real, because I should be able to not vote, but it should not still vote for somebody inadvertently.
Yes, sir.
And then, just everything. And then they starting to see we're wisening up with that. So it just goes back into the conversation of CRT. It's just that specifically with the education that they see we're wisening up. And the only thing they can do is what they're doing. Let's be very honest about it. They can't really sit here and make honest with the truth, because then it really forces them to give reparations. See, it's a domino effect. If they try to make it seem that black people gain benefits from slavery, then that in their minds gives them a reason for why, they don't deserve reparation. They gained a lot of tools and things. So that's their reparations. When Obama came into office, I think it was Mitch McConnell, or one of them that said, well, Obama was their reparation.
Yep.
But all while in 2007, the government had acknowledged their role in the enslavement process and passed something that said that they would, make good with the detrimental, part of history that they did to black people. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Obama becomes president, and he distracts us and diverts our attention from what we really should have been going for, was them making good on paying black folks back on reparations. But we got a little too caught up in the image of a black man becoming the president, first time ever in history. But it was a game that they played, It lasted for 8 years. But once Trump came in, he exposed a lot of these white supremacists and put it on Front Street. And then the whole campaign to go against Trump, putting Biden in office, has make people understand that Trump was bad, but systematically, when we're talking about politics and we're talking about politicians, Trump's not a politician, nor has he done anything systematically towards any people. For that matter, he has his opinions. He might not like this group and that group. He definitely likes you if you like him, no matter who you are. So, and that's how a lot of people work. Let's be honest. A lot of people like people who like them. A lot of people operate like Trump. No matter who they are, black, white, it don't matter. A lot of people operate under that umbrella. You like me, I like you. In that case, let's do business. Let's keep it business. Business is business. It's not about, you're my friend and the business. Trump just, but I think we sometimes get too caught up. And, when it goes back to people like Hitler and what they did in Nazi Germany and how they used, propaganda, that's what we're seeing right now. Because it just seems very odd. And no way, shape, or form do I endorse Trump. But some way in shape or form, they kind of treated him as if he was a black man, because everything they do, hitting him with RICO charges. He has not done anything any other president hasn't done, but yet they're treating him as if we would have thought he was Obama. The same, the way Obama is able to just sit back and all of these controversies around him just swirl around him, nothing happens about him, and everybody's focusing on indicting Trump. It's like everything they're doing to him, like they do to black people, somehow, some way only helps. Like sometimes when they do negative things to black people and they say these negative things, sometimes it inadvertently helps them. Whereas Trump want to arrest him, put the mugshot, inadvertently, you're making him look gangster in a way.
He's selling merch. Yeah, he's selling T-shirts off of that same mugshot.
And that's exactly what black folks do in a sense. When we see an opportunity and we kind of capitalize on it and we finesse the situation. He's, and well, that's because he's also from New York. In New York, everybody, is about finessing and, figuring out the best way. It's not always about being a thief or stealing. Finesse is just, just the charisma that a person might have about them, that they're able to get things that maybe the average person can't get. But that's just upon every person. But just, back to the main point of the CRT, just everything that we're seeing and that they're banning, and just everything that we have to see that they're doing, that they're questioning, because never, just like with Trump, when do white people just go after white people? Just, especially when it's a white person doing the same thing that the people that are, and then they use a person like Fannie Willis, a black woman, to do all of this. So they're inadvertently using a black woman who ain't really in the favor of doing right by black people, because there's some even controversy around the whole situation with Young Thug and the people that they allegedly, killed, that they're saying that she was actually the girlfriend to the guy that they allegedly killed. So it's a little bit convoluted with that. So you have a black woman who they're trying to prop up, even what they're doing with Kamala Harris, and even when they elected that woman in the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown, it's like they're giving us performative individuals that might, be black or as it relates to their color, but what are they doing is the real question. And if they're not doing anything for us, then at the end of the day, them being black is kind of irrelevant to it, because they're not using it in the way that it could best benefit them and their people.
That's right, bro. That's an excellent standpoint. And, to that same point earlier, speaking about the great Dr. Frances Cress Wilson, in the ISIS papers, back in the day, she would talk about white men's relationship with the gun, seeing that Montgomery brawl and seeing how, just assessing that situation, it shows, hey, when everything's fair, we're 9 times out of 10, I'll say 10 times out of 10, gonna win in that fight, which I think white men know Why do you think white men are so attached to guns, to firearms, shooting and killing?
Well, I think once, they realize throughout, history that they can't go toe to toe with black folks because of just the physical makeup of, the black man, the melanin, everything in and of itself. Even when you look at, black women and white women, even when you look at a white skinny woman and you look at a black skinny woman, they could both be skinny, but that black woman is still going to have more to her than the
Yep.
white woman. So just by the physical body makeup, when you look at a black man and a white man, the black man, even if he's skinny, he's still going to have certain attributes about him that the white man, no, he can't get one up because, as black folks, just like we were talking about finessing, black people that know they might not be the toughest, might not be the most brawler, they're going to figure out different ways on how to, fight somebody. Like Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather isn't the biggest brawling person in the world. He's a more defensive fighter. So he's looking to wear down his opponent because if they're all big and then you wear them down and then he's able to come in attack mode once you wore down. So just, strategically putting that is also another, defect that they have because they could be big and brolic. And like, even look at Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury honestly has to really cheat every time he fights, always questioning his gloves. And when he did fight Deontay Wilder, there were definitely at times speculation that looked very suspect. So even when they fight and even when they win, they have to cheat. When we talk about steroids, black people only took steroids because white folks started taking steroids because they couldn't compete toe to toe with black folks when it comes to baseball, football, basketball, anything.
Yeah.
So steroids really isn't something that black people just did. It's because white people started doing it. And then if they started getting this, strength that even surpassed them because they're taking drugs, then black folks started dibbling, dabbling. And even so, not all black people did. There were still black people that never took any type of steroids and was still better than the white people who took steroids. So even when they get enhancements, they still can't compete. It's even when it comes down to like their sexual, there's a book about just the concept of just a buck breaking, the delectable Negro. And when we talk about just, when white people talk, like even when I watch a couple of these sports clips, they always have a black male's genitalia on their mind. They're always trying to seek out ways to be the black man. When you look at some of these concepts of like cuckold, it's usually a white man and a white woman who are married and they bring in like a black man to watch pleasure their white wife and they
Adam
get
22.
Prime example. So it goes back to slavery. Even when we look at a lot of the interracial relationships, people could say love is love, but a lot of times we see a dominance with the white individual over the black individual. Even if you two love each other, the way the world is set up, it's very different. And that's another thing. When a white man sees a black man with a white woman, that to them is another shot to their ego. Even if it's not a physical, one up where they got beat up or it's something like a physical combat, like every facet that we see in this world, Black people are always the head of it. They're always at the top of it. And there's always Black people, there's always a white person, like in basketball. Larry Bird was good. He was a great player, but they'll always try to prop him up as the hope. Tom Brady in football. It's always, even when you can have 100 dominant Black men in sports, but then you get one white person who's dominant, then they just got to prop him up like, he's just never seen before. Because when you look at football, there are thousands of Black players who are just as great as the way they try to prop up a Tom Brady, but because he's white, and yes, it is rare for a white person to be dominant in sport. So they're just even telling how insecure they are, because you have to spend all this time propping up a white person like Tom Brady, or in basketball, people like Luka Doncic, and all these other individuals. You have to spend all that time because they're not naturally gifted like that. because they don't have, melanin. And then, as we can see, even when, these people are like with Tom Brady, it was, years back, he had that deflate gate where he was deflating the balls. It was easier to catch. So even with white folks who they praise up, they even have controversy surrounding them. And then with black folks, they never, there's a lot of things there, there's a lot of individuals that might not have ever taken drugs, but to spike a person who's great on their own, you have to do those things. There's some people in baseball that aren't in the Hall of Fame. I recall who specifically, but they said, I think it was Barry Bonds.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Never took any performance enhancement. And that can be very true. It's not far-fetched that white people will systematically try to destroy black people. Even look at Bob Marley. Maybe it's never been proven, but there's a lot of speculation that when he went to the doctor, like him dying at, under 40, and him dying of what he died of, a lot of people speculated that the doctor was racist and he actually injected Bob Marley with the disease that he got. So that's, never been specifically confirmed, but a lot of times when we hear those things, Bob Marley being the revolutionary that he was, being the individual that represented a whole entire, country, Jamaica, it's just crazy when you think about that. It's definitely not far-fetched that they would systematically try to, knock us off, take us out when we're trying to do something to get the masses together to go against white supremacy and the power structure. They'll destroy anything that tried to go against that. And that's why we don't see a lot of these individuals, especially the people with money, like money that could back a lot of the things that we see that need the backing in the grassroots black community, because they always fear that, they might get some scandal with a woman, whether it be true or not, they'll make up a story. You might have never been with a woman. Look what they did to, I forget, that Cowboys fanatic guy.
Oh, Michael Irvin, man, that was crazy. Yeah.
See, they literally, the way he got out was because the footage showed that they had a very brief conversation that didn't even involve. If there was no footage to verify, they probably would have tried to put that all on Michael Irvin and be like, oh, he did this, he did that. But as you can see, Michael Irvin don't speak out for the black community. But just because you want to shuck and jive for, massa, don't mean that you're susceptible from being treated like how they treat everybody else.
That's right.
And I think sometimes more people need to get in those situations that think they're above racism and think they're above being treated like the everyday black person. Just because you could walk around with security and walk around with all those things, it definitely doesn't save everybody in your family, because some of these celebrities have gotten, incidents happen to their family members that was racist, whether it was violent or non-violent. It's just sometimes they just believe that, well, because I'm the celebrity, I got money, I could, get this person out of that. But that doesn't work the same way for the average person who might not be, that financially stable. So
that's right.
It just depends. So I just think that at the end of the day, just to, answer that question as a whole, just understanding that every facet that black people do, whether it's a physical combat, whether it's a mental combat, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be a level of white people feeling that they either have to cheat, they either have to put a disadvantage for black people, because if they didn't disadvantage black people by systematically impoverishing and putting black folks in the conditions that they have, we would be at the top of everything. You wouldn't see no cooning. You wouldn't see none of that, because the only reason you see a lot of the cooning for the most part is because people just trying to make a dollar. And that's just what it is. I don't accept it. I don't agree with it. I got more morals and values than to sell my soul for $1, because black people, no matter how much cooning you do, you're expendable. The second the white man don't want you anymore, you're done. And, unless you continue cooning, and then after a while, how many people going to be able to really live with themselves? Even if it's paying your bills and doing all of that, can you honestly really look in the mirror and continue to keep cooning? Even a lot of these rappers that promote a lot of the music and the lyrics, after you see what the damage that your music has done to, a generation of people, can you really keep making that music and honestly look at yourself and think that you're doing what's right by not just you, but by your own people? Why is it that you might have to see your child do something wrong to be like, oh, look at the mistakes that I've made. Oh, and it's affected so many other people. We have to understand these mistakes that are being made and stop it in the moment and not have to wait 20 years, 2, 3 generations and be like, oh, we messed up. No, we got to start figuring this out now so we can have the future generations not even have to fall brunt to what we're seeing in our society in 2023. But it's changing. And every day when we do what we do, like I said, whether it's entertainment, whether it's in the Black grassroots I'm talking about, whether it's entertainment through podcasts, documentaries, commercials, whatever it may be, we're doing what we need to do. It's just that we got to put in check a lot of this infiltration that's going on that's trying to, stop a lot of this Black progress. But we also can't get too caught up in the distractions that it takes us off track from what we got to do. We got to be able to keep a Ma'atian balance to it. Keep in check these coons and these people that's trying to throw, a monkey in the wrench, but also can't lose sight of what we got to do. So we just got to keep a balance. Can't get too caught up in the negative stuff because that, yet again, is, that's the devil's work. It's showing its face in a way to distract you from what you really need to do. And I think that once we overcome the distractions and we focus on our goal and come together as we're doing now, then there's really nothing that anything else can infiltrate ultimately what the bigger end goal, bigger picture is for us as a people.
For sure, bro. Right now, speaking on sports still, Deion Sanders, man, he has a lot of the white infrastructure scared and, trying to control him and control where Black athletes are going. And it's been recently exposed as well by a Black journalist. I think his last name is Trotter. He's real dope too. Jerry Jones has some tapes and the Bills owner talking about if the Black players, if they don't like it, they can just go back to Africa, stop complaining. Why do you think, or how rather, can Black athletes start to shift and revolutionize, if you will, sports and stop always falling for the same okie doke plan for these racist owners and empowering them and putting billions of dollars into their pockets?
Well, I would say the key to that is the same way, like when, even the conversation about Deion Sanders, the reason why he went to Colorado was because they were able to offer him more money. And it's based off of, let's say, like donors, people that are the alumni of the school of Colorado. Yeah, you compare that to where he was at with Jackson State. If a conglomerate of Black alumni, whether they're from, a fraternity, whether they're just from the area, if they would have pulled together, monies and things like that, then, maybe, because as we know, Deion Sanders has always showcased, yes, he's a Black man. Yes, he's done things in the name of Blackness, but he has definitely showcased, like, I'm going to go where the money's at. And when we as a people have been deprived of money and resource, Deion is the first person in his family to probably have generational wealth. Right. So when we put that in perspective, he is going to try every which way to keep that wealth within his family, right? And was he wrong for leaving an HBCU for, a PWI? I mean, yes, ultimately, but in a sense, he kind of converted a PWI, in a sense, to HBCU by default. Not saying it's going to last, because if they get rid of Deion Sanders, then a lot of, the only reason the allure is there for Black people to go there, like how they try to make Black people go to HBCU, is because now you have that individual who came from an HBCU who has that image like a Deion Sanders. So I think that when it comes to what we're doing, because if you think about before, when they told Black people that they couldn't be in baseball, what they do? They had to go and create the Negro League. There's no option. I think sometimes when our hand is forced, we do what's right, which is not always the greatest thing, because somebody shouldn't always have to force you to do something to get something done. Even if you do it, nobody should really have to force you. So when we look in the perspective that Black people were told you're not allowed to be in the MLB, so they then had to create the Negro League. And then when they started to see the Negro League was more dominant and people wanted that more than wanted MLB, then they had to say, well, we got to do a merger. So, but see, a lot of times, let's say at that point in history, the Negro League said, no, we're good. We don't need no merger. You be the white league and we'll be the Black league.
Yeah.
If they had did that, the only difference I'd say that could have done is that would have set in stone what people want to do. The second you integrate with them, they always going to have more of the money and the resources. They're always going to look at us as the tools to be used, because they didn't look at them as humans. They just said, oh, they can score more runs. They can run the bases faster. They can do so they just saw it as a performative thing. They didn't integrate because they said, treating Black people is really bad. And we should really, get together with them so we can, be one happy family. No, they just saw a dollar sign. And Black folks, because we hadn't been out of slavery that long, being enslaved, we will always, in a sense, during those times, resort to saying, okay, well, they're probably going to have more money and more resources. So if they can offer you, let's say, a $100,000 contract versus a $10,000 contract you're getting in the Negro Leagues, right? You're going to go with that one. But then ultimately the goal, then they took over the whole infrastructure. Because then all the people who were in control in the Negro League, they probably got rid of them and kept the same white people that were part of the racist aspects of baseball. So that too is another turning point into just, how they're able to just shift gears on us, even when we have our own thing. It's like a lot of these, even like BET. BET was Black owned. It might not have shown all the best imagery, especially late at night, but it was Black owned until it was sold by Bob Johnson. But until then, it was Black owned. Whether or not we agree with all of the stuff that was shown, that's another conversation. But ultimately, that was a Black man who ran a Black company that was for Black people showcasing Black imagery. So him selling that ultimately just threw it away, because yes, the money might have been a good deal in the moment, but anytime somebody is offering you $1 million, whatever you have is probably worth $5 million. Nobody's offering you what it costs. So if a white person could have saw that BET was going to be worth, let's say he was given $5 million. Let's say BET was bought by $5 million. They knew and saw that this is going to make us 10, 15 million. So if a white person could have saw that vision, what is distracting us, which is the money, that's what's distracting us of us seeing that long-term goal. Some of us, a lot of times, goes back to just coming out of the enslavement process and the mental slavery that they still had us under, even we were out of the physical chains, the mental slavery had us so far gone in the sense that of the economic deprivation that a lot of times we would just do things just because of the dollar. And because people did that, and then sometimes it didn't even work out in the long run. That's why we see even some people in this generation trying to catch up. You see some of these people who are the children of all these celebrities, and they did what they did to make sure that their children is out here ain't doing what's right either. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we got to understand that there was a cutoff process with just the raising of the Black people, the crack era. The father being outside the house, you get more money. Father being in the house, you get less money. The catch-22 that they set up on the Black, household. All of these different things, and they're still doing it through different means. They trying to use different words and different terminologies for what they're doing, but it's all the same game. It's just they're playing. It's a different, you have one game, NBA 2K comes out every year. It's pretty much the same exact game, just a couple different players. That's just what history is showing us. It's the same game, but now it's just a couple different characters that they throw in there, throw a couple different graphics, a couple little trinkets they give us a couple little discounts here or there, give us little bonuses when we buy the game, when we pre-order, things like that. They just been doing that, but there's no need for a bonus in a society when you're good. If you can back yourself by the land and the resources and everything, a person don't necessarily need a bonus. A person don't necessarily need to be, oh, I'm Forbes top 5, top 10. If it's about just, having everything you need, going back even to somewhat of a barter system. Just because somebody lends you $5 in the moment doesn't mean that it has to be exactly 5. It could get to be where if you can provide a service, then I can provide a service, and then we trade off. Even if it's not exactly equivalent, it's still a system that gets what one person wants and what another person wants, and you can trade off. Even if it's not the same exact monetary charge that person would, price it at, it still is a concept of both parties getting what they want and everybody getting good. But a lot of times we too much want to put a specific dollar amount to something and be like, oh, I lent you $100. You got to do $100 worth of whatever. Even if what you're providing is good and solid, I don't care. Like sometimes we just got to get back into that, trading kind of barter system. And trust me, society was much better when it wasn't always just about a dollar and all about everything being about this or that. Because at the end of the day, if they wanted to make the new dollar bill, whatever they said they wanted to be, then that's what it would be. And every dollar that we have right now wouldn't be worth anything. So we're still only going by what they're telling us based off of the monetary system. And that's why they even tried like a lot of this NFT. They say 95% of NFTs aren't worth nothing.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I never got into it because I've always been a little bit like,
skeptical of it.
Yeah, skeptical about like people making all this thousands of dollars. When have they ever just allowed Black folks to just make thousands and millions and all of this ridiculous amounts of money? And just because, especially during a time where, the economy wasn't really the greatest during the pandemic, like out of all the times of that to get its rise and, everybody partaking in it, it's during a time where people kind of didn't really have all of this to do. It's just, mind games and tricks that they've been doing. And they just see that the digital age has come very far from, like when you think about what imagine if Hitler and them had Instagram and all of that, and they were doing what they was doing in addition to having social media. Like, it would be ridiculous. So it just goes to show you that at the end of the day, they're using every trick in the book that they have, and they're using social media, especially with this AI, them creating these digital images of like, where it's like a house and all of that, but it's really like you zoom back far, you squint, and it looks actually like a specific image. It's like, what can you believe now? They have that woman on Instagram who's literally not real, but but she could get 11,000 likes, but something like, a grassroots conscious video, conscious podcast, it's like pulling teeth just to get 100, 200, 300 people to like it. But a woman who's completely fake, you ain't never, like, even more so beyond just not being able to come close to some of these people, you ain't never going to see it because she don't exist. She could get 11,000 likes. People twisted and lusting. That just goes to show you where some of people's minds are, because there's white folks lusting over her too. This ain't just a bunch of Black folks, because for the most part, we kind of know it ain't real. I think it's a lot of other people that fall gullible to what's going on, So it's just crazy, the digital age and what they're trying to use and what they're doing. It's just very interesting the times we're living in, and that's why it's good that Black people like yourself and other people on the grassroots level are utilizing the social media age for the good things and not utilizing it whereas we see some of these people have podcasts and they just disrespect Black women. They just have no regard for themselves nor the people that they bring on their platforms. You have people that are just very sketchy individuals online that are just being propped up. They get these millions of views. They get, means and resources to be able to do stuff, but it's negative and it's stupid things, other than the people that if, a person like yourself was given, let's say, 100K grant and say, we give you 100K, you will build the studio, you will involve everything that what we need to do. Whereas when they give some of these other individuals money, they go out and say, we're giving away PS5s and start a whole riot in New York City. Like, that's the difference of why, and that explains exactly why they give certain Black people money and other Black people got to really work hard for it, really put in work with their communities to gain some of the things that we need to get. Whereas other people could just yell at their gaming system and people are like, oh my God, let me subscribe, million. Like, it's just ridiculous at some point. But hopefully things will change in that realm where stupidity does not get monetized. And it could bring back the realness of the essence. Because even just when we look at hip hop, a lot of the hip hop that we see, it's just convoluted with not just the lyrics of the drugs and all of the negativity. It's just the concepts of who did this and who did that. It's like, well, nobody's going to argue 2 and 2 equals 4. If somebody comes over and says 2 and 2 is 5, you ain't going to argue with them. Just like there's no reason to argue with somebody that tries to say anybody other than Black people created hip hop. If anybody else tells you that, that's no different than somebody telling you 2 + 2 = 5. Don't sit there and argue with them, or even, I don't even think it even matters to even have a conversation about this, because we know it's true. Just like somebody comes, Eminem, the greatest rapper alive. No, he's not. Just because he's that one rare white person that has talent. I'm not saying he don't have talent. I'm not, I give credit where credit is due. He is a talented individual, but I'm not about to sit here and give him that title over countless Black people. That the reason why hip hop was created was because of people like Eminem's ancestors that were racist and did what they did. The reason why we have a lot of the things that we have, the reason why we are a superior race, not because I'm getting caught in my feelings and saying, oh, Black people better than white people, but Black people have to work 5 times harder. They have to deal with issues 5 times worse. Everything for Black people is heightened to at least the 5th, 10th power. So by default, Black people will be superior to every other person because of the conditions that people put us under that make us have to achieve higher than the average human being because of the conditions that you put us in. That's just is what it is. Has nothing to do with my feelings about it, has nothing to do with emotions. If you don't want us to be as great as we are, then y'all should never done what y'all did to us. Simple as that. They made us this great. That's heavy. Because we were great before this. They just made us even greater because it's like coal. You put coal, you keep putting coal. If you don't touch coal, it's gonna stay cold. You put that coal under pressure, keep putting it under pressure, keep putting, it's gonna turn out to a diamond, and it's gonna be more valuable, like how we are more valuable than anything you can really put a price on to some degree. Because diamond is one of the most precious commodities that we see across the globe. People die over blood diamonds. People are being killed over it. That's just like us. Our melanin is that diamond. And they put us under all of that pressure. And you thought it would break us, but now it's only making us greater. And yeah, we have a class of coonism that goes on, but that still does not reign supreme over the righteous Black people. Just because we're continuously shown these images of Black people either doing negative things, saying negative things, that does not make it the mass. Because I know far too many people, Black men and Black women, that are doing what they're supposed to do, doing right in their relationships, doing everything that it takes that we need in the society for me to just look on the TV or listen to the radio and be like, oh, all Black people like this or all Black people like that. You know, I know far too many great Black people and serious down-to-earth Black folks than just to think that all of these celebrities are embodiments of how Black people operate or how they are. You know, just going to Atlanta, all of the hospitality that when we go down there that we get, you know, I can never be an individual that ever tries to say anything negatively in any way, shape, or form about Black people because of what I might see on TV or the images that they want to put in front of us, because I know far too many Black folks in all communities, but let's just talk about Atlanta, that are doing what they're supposed to do, that are keeping their word, you know, because word is bond, and that are doing everything that they're supposed to do, doing right by their children, being serious, coming to lectures, taking notes. You know, it's not always about going out and partying, even though you can do that. It's about keeping a balance. So I just know far too many people that are doing what they're supposed to do and on track for what we want to see from our people, to get caught up in these little images that of course, they got the power to put what they want on TV. They got the power who they can want to put to make go viral. So of course, whatever they're going to showcase to us, i.e. the negativity that they want to implement and make it seem like we do, they don't want you to travel the world and go to different communities. When you hear of Atlanta, they just want you to think of negative things. But when you go to Atlanta, it's not what it's not what people try to make it out to be. You go to Compton. When I went to Compton, me and my father went to Compton back in 2014. We went to Compton High School on their first day of high school because we knew the guy who was the art teacher. And he took us to the art room. And me coming from New York, they were doing even some of superior things to people in New York were doing. Wow. So when people try to make this one-sided image of what Compton is or what Los Angeles is, you know, when you go to these places, it's not what they try to make it out to be. They just hope that they deter you from ever going to these places to see the greatness. And a lot of times the greatness lies with Blackness. That's why they don't want you to see it, because they want you to not have respect for Black people. They don't want you to say, wow, a Black person built this, a Black person did that. We got to have some more respect for Black people. They're an asset to society. They don't want white folks to think like that. They don't even want a lot of Black folks to think like that. They want them to think, oh, the white man got the answer. The white woman got the answer. She got the job. He got the job. Go to them. They got the money. They got the resources. And sometimes they might do, but that's why we have to put ourselves in a position to win, because if we continue just going to the white people for the jobs and for the money and the resources, then it will never put us in a position for us to be able to rely on each other, to be able to then now we go to us at a bank. We own our own banks to get a loan. We don't got to worry about not getting a loan for a business. We just got to make sure we got all our things intact. And we know we get our loan. We're not going to go in there and worry about, oh, is my Blackness going to stop me from being able to get a loan? In a society where we will need a protective force, but it ain't about driving on my way home from a long day at work and I got to worry about a cop pulling me over because I'm Black. These are the type of things that we got to start looking into. And sometimes you might have to make a sacrifice. Life is about sacrifices. You might sacrifice, you know, that white person offer you a job, pay you $2-3 more. Black person offer you a job. That person, it might be a little less. You might want to take that job with that Black person because you're going to then help build that Black person up and help that Black person in what they're doing and yourself. Maybe that Black person has a family, the money that y'all are accumulating through the business goes to that family. But then when you're working for white folks, all you're doing is giving them money for them to be able to do what they need to do. And even when we talk about this immigration, that at the end of the day, what's weird is that Black people, in a sense, are at more of an advantage when we see a lot of what we see today to support white people than they are some of these immigrant groups, because these immigrant groups, their money is going back to their country.
Wow.
You support a white person, might not be the greatest thing to do, but it's still going back into the American economy. It's this is
But
like
hey, that's very interesting.
so yeah, it's just like when you see some of these you know, some of the, no disrespect, some of the Arab and some of the Mexicans, when they're selling, let's say, some flowers on the side of the road, whether there's, you know, whatever they're selling, we know a lot of their money goes back to their country. Even if they're using money to sustain themselves in America, a lot of their money goes back to them in their country. And what happens when they come to America, make $100,000, bring it back to their country and build their country up? So now you just took money from the American economy to go build up your country, or even if you don't do that, just do nothing productive with it. Then how does that help Black people? Because stimulating the American economy does help Black people. Stimulating Mexico and India does not help Black people in any way, shape, or form. You know, and that's what sometimes when people say the lesser of two evils, sometimes you might say, you know, all right, if a Black person don't have it, but I gotta choose, even though Mexicans and Arabs are closer to Black people than a white person, in the system that we live in today, there's nothing that would a Black person could benefit by supporting an immigrant class to some degree, because that's not going to necessarily go back to stimulate the American economy, which they can help Black people overall in a sense. Not saying that everything is going to help Black people, but you really have more of a chance of the American dollar benefiting Black people than what would the Mexican, you know, what would a person having money from America and Mexico do for Black folks? Nothing. So, and that's what I mean. We have to dissect and we have to look at things from all angles. There are great people from all different groups and different classes, but they're pushing these immigrants over here. And a lot of the ones that don't speak English and they're coming over here and they're not, even if they're not doing anything like causing crime or anything, if they're taking jobs and they're taking resources, like for instance, I went into a pizza shop and the people that worked there were Indian. And I was asking him something very simple, like, can I get one of those 2-liter drinks and a can? But it's like, it literally took him a good 60 seconds for me to even register what I was even talking to him about.
Wow.
And at some point, that gets a little ridiculous. Now, if I went to India and it took 60 seconds, there ain't nothing I'm gonna say
He would
about
be frustrated with you.
Yes, that's completely understandable. But if we're in America and I'm getting something like, you know, yeah, pizza's not American, it's Italian, but pizza has been pretty much Americanized. But if I go into those establishments, and even if I go to some of these other establishments and there's Mexican people working there, you know, sometimes these people don't understand, because even just for an example, we went to an establishment and we asked the people, were the egg rolls vegetable? Because like my father's a vegetarian. They said yes, but they weren't. They had pork in them. And we realized after the fact, but the point is that the miscommunication was that he probably thought we were asking him, were there vegetables in it? Not that if it was vegetarian, he probably got it mixed up, which is, I'm not going to necessarily blame you, but systematically, if all of these restaurants and all of these places that we go to, in a sense, the people don't look like us, and now they're not even speaking like us, it becomes very convoluted in a society that was built by Black people.
That's heavy.
So
that's true. Yeah, I love that, man. Growing up, bro, what was it like being around your father, who is truly a living legend to us, and then having to go to school where we kind of get indoctrinated every single day? What were those days like being in class, already having knowledge of self?
Well, I mean, as far as like the schooling, I would say from like when I got to high school, because my father, the high school that I went to was predominantly for Black and Hispanic, and my father was actually doing Saturday classes there while I was in middle school at the
Okay.
time. So basically, I kind of had an ushering into the high school, and that kind of experience was a little bit more along the lines of people knew who my father was, more
Mm-hmm.
Black along those lines. So it was just kind of something that was like, my father just stressed to me that, you're gonna be in school to more so socialize, but
Yeah.
when you're, in front of me, around me, is gonna be, you're gonna get the education. Like when I came home, I had to do like a couple pages in a workbook, English, language arts book, math book. So when I went to school, it was kind of more so about my approach to just socializing and interacting with other people and gaining that footing. Not saying I didn't have my mishaps and things like that, because just because my father was who he was didn't take away from me doing some dumb things that,
Yeah.
wasn't the greatest, but that just
Yeah.
goes to show you. I could just imagine the countless people who never had no positive imagery and why they did what they did, because I might not have done everything the best. And look at the type of person that I had. It just goes to show you that it's not even always about you're going to have somebody and everything is going to be perfect just because you have this person always there. You're going to fall victim to some peer pressure from time to time. That's just natural. And if you don't, some people might think that's kind of odd, because it's just a kind of a process. Everybody's going to make a mistake. The point is to make a mistake. If you don't make mistakes, then you will never be able to take a hardship when it happens to you. You have to understand what an obstacle is and how to overcome it. So I think that just growing up, for me, it was more so about just understanding that what you're doing in school is about socializing. Yes, you're going to learn. Yes, you got to do what you're supposed to do. You have to make sure that you're getting good grades and that you're, playing the system right. Just like a game, you play a game. If you keep failing, you're going to figure out another way. But you're going to keep playing that game until you're successful. Just like school. School might be a game. It's a game to some degree. There are things you are going to be able to take with you, some of, the teachers you might have interacted with, some of the experience that you had with other students, but more so just at the end of the day, it's about socializing. You're not going to go to school and they're going to teach you about Black history the way you need to know it. You're going to, and what's crazy is that you probably could have got a better education when we were coming up at school than these kids are now, because the type of level of indoctrination that's going on now is a little bit like, it's like if I was a child of this generation, seeing some of the imagery that I see in some of these schools, man, I would be on fire. And even more so than just being angry. And I would be more so angry about the countless students that want to abide by this nuanced way of thinking that's just very white supremacist. Even if it's not about white supremacy, anything that goes against the common fabric as it relates to certain things in society, and just an ushering in of things that we don't even have education right, Black history right, history in and of itself right, but we want to throw all of these things that a child, that shouldn't be the first thing they should be introduced to. And even if you were going to talk about certain things that they're indoctrinating the kids with, they're not even talking about it from a good perspective. It's like a lot of these teachers are a little weird. Like, I don't know if it's that conducive for some of the, and it's really these white men, because they just, like we were talking about with the Delectable Negro, there's just a certain sexual nature that a lot of these white people have an infatuation with young Black boys. Even in Atlanta, when they had the Atlanta child murders, and they killed on that Black man. Yeah, I think that Black man might have done things and killed some of the grown people that he did, but
not all the kids.
Yeah, them kids, they were white people and white supremacists doing them things, grabbing kids up and all of that. So, they've always hid behind a lot of different things to continue their racist actions and everything that they've been doing because they don't want to admit, and some of us as a people don't want to admit, some of the older generation don't want to admit that they didn't really do everything they could have done for this younger generation. Some of these rappers who were part of the destruction of just the Black, through the gangster lyrics and the gangster imagery, a lot of that, when we think about a lot of these people, aren't trying to really repent for that. It just kind of really really far-fetched to me, because there was a long period of time where if rap music stayed conscious and did not go down the route of this gangster degenerate sex rap, we would not be where we're at to some degree. Now, yes, we would still be facing certain things, but they wouldn't have all these tools. White supremacy has tools. White supremacy is not just white people just being racist. White supremacy has tools, and they use Black people and what we like the most as the tools.
Right.
And, I like sports, but part of a tactic is sports, entertainment, anything that can keep a Black man, Black woman distracted when we're economically deprived, we don't have land, now, if we had all of those things in an abundance as a Black people, it wouldn't matter. We spend all day watching sports, all day, doing extracurricular things. Because if we was good, we would be good. But that goes again to some people who might end up being rich in society. They good, but they're not thinking about the whole global experience of the Black man and Black woman. You might be good. You might have 10 neighbors that's Black, but you might just be a small percentage of that in a sense. So we have to start looking outside, and nobody's forcing anybody to do something that they don't want to do. But at the end of the day, when these rappers have no problem spending money, ridiculous amounts of money, flying women out, doing this, maybe some of these rappers maybe need to not sit up and just have a bunch of babies to have to pay $20,000. What if one of your child support payments could be a payment towards the Black community? And we just got to get real about it, because a lot of people, I understand everybody is entitled to live their own life, do whatever they want to do. Their decision is their decision. I can't do nothing, tell them what they can or cannot do. But we all do have our opinions. And when we see the history of Black people as a whole, I just don't think it's very conducive that all of our focuses sometimes is just on the materialistic concept. And even if we were on materialistic, a lot of materialistic comes from wanting other brands. We got to support our own, and we got to start doing that, and we are. And I think even since the pandemic, we've been supporting our own, creating our own businesses, whether it was people being able to create a business because they got a stimulus check. Maybe they was getting some unemployment checks. They stacked up some paper, created a business, even an online business. You don't really need money, so to speak. You could have just started up with a couple thousand, started selling shirts, selling hats, making different shea butters, things of that nature. So I think that a lot of times when we talk about our conditions we face, we're in the process of it becoming what we want it to be. We're seeing what our ancestors laid out, and we're trying in the best way possible, for the most part, to continue that legacy. Yeah, we're going to have some bumps in the road. Yeah, you have a couple people that are not on code, and either they're going to have to get on code or they're just going to have to get off course.
That's right.
Simple as that. But at the end of the day, everybody deserves a chance, because if somebody would have judged Malcolm X when he was 20 and said, "Oh, you ain't nothing," the person that he became, that the world, Black, white, pink, purple, respect and renown so much, we would have never saw. So it's not just about throwing somebody away. However, they are doing a ridiculous job at drugging these children. See, before people might have did certain drugs, cocaine, they might have did crack, but now these pills and all of these manufactured,
Yeah.
like some of these rappers that are on some of these like really hard drugs, it might be a little bit more difficult trying to get them back on track, because some of them drugs will really take you off course, and there ain't nothing a human being gonna do about it. This meth and stuff, this is not to play with. Fentanyl, if something says you could touch it and die, imagine what it does to your body.
That's right.
I don't think there's anything, so that's why Black folks especially got to stay away from anything. You know, stay away from all types of drugs, because I don't even think Black folks are on crack and on that like they once were. Now, yes, you have people that are on drugs, but there are record skyrocket numbers of white folks that are on that meth and on prescription pills, even more so than Black people when they were in the height of the crack era.
Right.
They don't want to talk about it now. If they were to report the same way they reported about the crack era, the way they would report about what's going on with this meth and white people, it wouldn't even compare. And because you have more white people in society than Black people, obviously, because they tried to kill majority of us off, that's the only reason I think that there's more white people in society than Black folks, is because even though they still didn't realize that we would still be here to the masses that we are, doing what we're doing, hoping that we would have just said, oh, the world is the way it is. We just go, no. And they're mad that even in the hood, we could be happy and joyous and have fun, while they live in the suburbs, 50 acres, all that, and they're still sad and trying to figure out ways how they're going to deprive Black people of the little they have, while they have a whole bunch and ain't doing nothing with it.
Come on, Heru, man. Brother, thank you so much, man, for being flexible, understanding. On the way out, where can everybody follow you, keep up with your upcoming projects, and so much more?
But yes, you can follow me on Instagram at The Real Neset, TheRealNeset. And you can also follow me and my father, Kaba Kamene's, our Panther Prince Productions account. That's at Panther Prince Productions, PantherPrinceProductions. And they can also go to KabaKamene.com. We have many different offerings for the community, webinars, quibinars, documentaries. We're currently working on a series of documentaries to end out this year and go into next year, up until we got something we're going to cap off, and we probably going to be coming out to Atlanta doing a screening of me and Amadeus's the Lanier documentary, Reviving Oscarville, for November 1st. We're looking for November 1st, Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to be showcasing it, more than likely, probably at JB's Records. So we're going to be coming down there, and then the next day, on 2024, November 2nd of 24, we're going to be doing, on the Day of the Dead, we're going to be doing something as it relates to honoring the ancestors. We're going to have, we're going to make a call out, and we're going to get as much Black folks as we can to pull up to Lake Lanier, do maybe a 30-minute impromptu lecture by my father, do a little offering, an ancestral ritual. So that's what we're headed to do coming next year. We got the documentaries lined up, and the cap off, just the lineup for this year and next year is going to be Atlanta, Georgia, November.
My God, Heru, bro, thank you again, man.